Kalala Malak Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rachak Wadash, and double honors to the elders of JMS Ruel. Blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing his word in all sincerity and in honesty. With that being said, Shalom Israel Barakatah. Today's lesson: Babylon's weapons are depleted. And here we have an RT.com article that says, U.S. spends more on nukes than rest of world combined. Watchdog. And that is true. And they also make them at a higher price. The article continues to say, Washington's nuclear weapons budget rose by $12.4 billion in a single year, according to ICANN. U.S. spending on nuclear weapons surged by nearly a quarter in 2025 compared to the previous year, according to findings by an anti-nuclear watchdog. And when it comes to this U.S. spending, the Iranians use that as a strategic advantage. In a report released on Tuesday, the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, ICANN, said the world's 9 nuclear-armed states spent nearly $119 billion on their arsenals last year, the equivalent of $3,768 every second. Look at that. The article continues to say, the U.S. remained by far the biggest spender, pouring $69.2 billion into its nuclear arsenal, more than all other 8 nations combined. Washington also recorded the largest annual increase, with spending rising 22% year on year, or $12.4 billion. Just look at the national debt right now. It is $39.24 trillion. Now, when it comes to Iran, they make their weapons at a cheaper price, while America makes them at an even higher price. And Iran understands that America is the biggest spenders by far when it comes to weapons manufacturing. So they have also used that as a strategic advantage. That's why this article from DefenseNews.com says U.S. munitions depleted by Iran war will take years to restore. Analysis finds. One thing you have to understand about Iran is that they have been preparing for over 20 years for this particular period in time. And they have studied their enemies down to the T. The United States will need at least 3 years to restore an array of critical weapons systems to pre-war levels following its 38-day bombing campaign against Iran, according to the Center for Strategic International Studies. Right, U.S. munitions have been depleted by the Iran war. Also remember that America is downing cheap drones with million-dollar missiles. Now, when it comes to the scriptures, they speak of these missiles made. That brings us over to our first scripture of Isaiah 54:16. Let's go over to that scripture. Here we have Isaiah 54:16. Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work, and I have created the waster to destroy. When it comes to a smith or a blacksmith, they work with metals. Now, an ancient smith designed, built, and repaired weapons and armor in ancient times. But when it comes to the modern day smith, He is a scientist that brings forth those deadly weapons of mass destruction, those arrows of mass destruction. He brings forth those instruments that have the capacity to waste and to destroy. Now, when it comes to the smith, the noise of the hammer and of the anvil is ever in his ears, according to the scripture of Ecclesiasticus or Sirach 38 and 28. And the smith sits by the anvil. That's found upon Sirach 38 and 28. Let's go over to that scripture. Here we have Ecclesiasticus or Sirach 38 and 28, which says, the smith also sitting by the anvil, and considering the iron work, the vapor of the fire wasteth his flesh, and he fighteth with the heat of the furnace. The noise of the hammer and the anvil is ever in his ears, right, constructing. And his eyes look still upon the pattern of the thing that he maketh. He setteth his mind to finish his work, and watcheth to polish it perfectly. That's right. Right, and something that's polished has been perfected, as in the case of those arrows of mass destruction, along with their guidance systems of propulsion. They are perfected in their upgrades. And when it comes to those arrows of mass destruction, in the time of war, they shall not miss, because the Spirit of the Lord shall be guiding them to hit, to strike their strategic targets. With that being said, let's go over to 2 Ezra 16 and 13, because that scripture speaks of those arrows that shall not miss. Here we have that scripture of 2 Ezra 16 and 13. For strong is his right hand that bendeth the bow, his arrows that he shooteth are sharp, and shall not miss when they begin to be shot into the ends of the world. Right. Those 200 million missiles shall not miss, nor break their ranks in flight. They shall fall upon modern day Idumea, which speaks of America, aka Babylon the Great. Babylon the Great shall become the lake of fire. And those detonations shall also cause the great earthquake. The day cometh when these sharp arrows of mass destruction shall be shot into the ends of the world, which speaks of America, aka Babylon the Great. Let's go over to that scripture of Isaiah 34 and 5. Here we have that scripture of Isaiah 34 and 5. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea, and upon the people of my curse to judgment. The Lord's sword that shall be bathed in heaven speaks of those arrows of mass destruction coming down upon modern day Babylon the Great to destroy her from coast to coast. The land of Idumea represents modern day America, but it's also a Greek word for saying Edom. And upon the people of my curse to judgment. Right, a good example of that curse is leprosy. Cain said that the curse of leprosy that the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai put on him was too much to bear. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. That sword represents those arrows of mass destruction coming down upon modern day Idumea. They shall all take flight and shall not miss, according to that scripture of 2 Ezra 16 and 13. Those swords of the Lord shall take flight, they shall all take flight, and none shall malfunction, and none shall miss to hit their strategic targets, and none shall be brought down during flight, because the Spirit of the Lord shall be guiding them to their strategic targets. None shall miss to hit their strategic targets, and not even a dome will help in that day. Like I said, the Spirit of the Lord shall be guiding them to strike their strategic targets, all of them. Modern day Babylon the Great shall be destroyed from coast to coast, and this is the will and purpose of the Lord, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahushai, according to the scripture of Jeremiah 51 and verse 29. That scripture of Jeremiah 51 and verse 29 says, and the land shall tremble in sorrow for every purpose, and that's the key word, purpose of the Lord, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahushai, shall be performed against Babylon. That's speaking of modern day Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without an inhabitant. Modern day Babylon is America. And what's happening with Iran and the so-called Israeli state and the Americans shall lead to World War III. But first cometh the CHIP of Revelation 13, 16 through 18, and then that third world war cometh quickly. That third world war of utter destruction shall come quickly as soon as that CHIP is implemented upon the world. Those missiles shall also touch down upon the place that the small hats now inhabit. But the heavy bombardment shall be concentrated upon modern day Babylon the Great. It shall never rise to power. It shall stay desolate and without inhabitants, so that people may learn how not to live. Once these missiles touch down, that great earthquake shall emerge, and that scenery and landscapes you once knew shall change drastically in that besom of destruction. Nothing shall be left, and nothing shall be recognized upon modern day Babylon the Great. That even those wild birds shall stretch themselves upon that line of confusion. Right, upon those borderlines. No one will know where one state ended and another one began. They shall stretch themselves upon that borderline of confusion, and no one will know where one state ended and another one began, due to the ash and massive debris that shall be upon that land. Nothing shall be left from that onslaught of that army of the horsemen. And nothing shall be left, and nothing shall be recognized. The army of the horsemen is in reference to those arrows of mass destruction that shall take out modern day Babylon the Great from coast to coast. But with that being said, Ka'ala Malak Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Racha Kodash, and double honors to the elders of Jim Ruel, blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing his word in all sincerity and honesty. With that being said, Shalom Israel, Barakatah.